Hello everyone, I'm Kristen Johansson from the Multicultural Communities Council of South Australia. I'd like to welcome you to the second series of Food from Our Homeland, which we're doing in conjunction with Wellbeing SA. We'll be teaching you some interesting, low-cost, nutritious meals.
Hello everyone, my name is Lena Gasparyan and I work in the Multicultural Communities Council as a project officer. And today I'm going to demonstrate for you how to cook Armenian fermented cabbage soup, which we call Qrchik. In Armenia, it is popular in late fall or in winter time. Harvesting is normally done throughout autumn, which is in our hemisphere, it's September, October and November. And this is the time when men were busy picking cabbages while women were busy pickling cabbages in the kitchen. So family members work hand in hand to make sure they stock up for winter. Why so? Because in Armenia, winter lasts 4 to 5 months and it gets really cold and some roads can be closed. Even some doors of the houses can be closed. You cannot come out from your house. So families had to make sure, women had to put their management skills, their best foot forward to make sure they have enough food to feed their families for 4 to 5 months.
Lena, you told me that this was one of your favourite dishes when you were a child.
Yes, I remember Grandma used to make this at winter time because we will start fermenting cabbage probably late autumn. So it takes up to 2 weeks to ferment cabbage and then we will eat this food as a main dish in our family.
Okay, and Lena, I know because we work together, you've said that when you were a child in Armenia, sometimes it was quite difficult. I remember you talking about one cold winter where you didn't have very much food available.
Yeah, so especially this is going back to long time ago when we even didn't have electricity, the cold times, which are unfortunate times. And lucky enough, we had all these pickled vegetables handy, so we could mix bits and pieces together and make food available. Actually, we have fermented cabbage on our table with every meal. I think it's good to clear your guts before you get into the other foods.
Okay, so that's a bit like kimchi. We had a Korean woman on our staff for a few years and they have kimchi every day with their main meal.
Yeah, it's good. And now I ferment my own, so I will buy cabbages very cheap in the central market or go to your local markets, support local South Australian produce. So it's really cheap and it's very easy to make. So first thing to do is we are going to wash our cabbage and drain and set aside for the moment.
So while Lena's washing the cabbage, I know when she was looking to make this meal, because it is a childhood favourite, she tried several versions of bought cabbage, but none of them were as good as the cabbage you make yourself at home. Lena, that's a really important step, isn't it? Washing the cabbage to get the salt off.
Yeah, you have to, Kristen, because the last thing you want is to have salty meal. You can always add salt at the end if it is lacking of salt, but it should be fine for the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, some of the store purchased bought cabbages can be vinegary taste or can be really salty. So it's very important to make your own.
So you can see Lena's only using part of a cabbage in this dish. So if you actually pickle a whole cabbage, that gives you quite a few meals.
So next we are going to chop up the onions and then saute them in a little bit of olive oil. We will add the oil little bit at a time.
So those are white onions that you're using?
Yeah, you know what's funny, Kristen, in Armenia we normally use red onions, but what I found in Australia is red onion has a bit sweeter taste.
You've noticed that with a few foods, haven't you, that they actually taste different in Australia?
Yes.
And some of the other people at the Multicultural Communities Council, or MCCSA, have said the same thing, that some food they buy in their home country, grown here, tastes differently.
I'm just going to add some oil and start frying. We will go low to medium heat because we don't want to burn the onions. So we start sauteing the onions in a minute.
So would you normally eat this for lunch or for dinner?
This was a big dinner, so families used to get together and share a meal in the evening. So we would use Armenian bread, lavash, which will break it up in the dish.
Okay.
So in Armenia, you can make lavash, which lasts for a long time. It has long shelf life. So I remember in the villages, especially when I was traveling to visit some of our relatives, they will make lavash and then store it for, I think, up to 40 days. So you take it out, they're dry, so you just sprinkle water and then it just gets back to normal state.
So you get the dried lavash, you sprinkle the water on it, and it freshens it up. Okay.
And then you have it with a meal. Yes. Kristen, can I ask you for a favor? Can you stir the onions for me while I'm chopping the potatoes?
Sure. Happy
Thank you
to
so
do
much.
that, Lena.
Thank you. And we cut in small pieces so it gets cooked quicker.
So the pieces are about 2 centimetres, 2.5 centimetres.
You can do bigger or smaller to your liking.
And a lot of children, you said, eat this meal as well, so you don't want it too big for little mouths.
So next thing which I'm going to do is to pour some water into our cracked wheat. For gluten-free option, you can use quinoa. And I'm going to use later on flour just to thicken the soup. So for gluten-free option, just use cornstarch. And you can have a vegan and gluten-free meal. You are doing a great job, Kristen, there.
Oh, thank you. It's good being the sous chef. So we're cooking on an induction cooktop today, which we're not so used to. If you're doing it on your stove at home and you know what low to medium is, this will probably only take you 2 to 3 minutes to step. All right, they're sizzling away, Lena. I reckon they're nearly there.
So next thing which I like, and this is my favorite thing, use paprika in an oil. The smell of paprika when it hits the oil is like amazing. This used to be my childhood favorite things to do.
So, Lena, a lot of people don't know quite where Armenia is. It's a very small country. How would you describe it to people where it is?
So we are neighboring Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan and Georgia.
And it's a fairly small population, isn't it? Just
Yes.
a couple of million people?
Of million people, because Armenians spread around the globe over 100 years ago. So Kristen, I'm just going to interrupt now and just put the garlic a little bit in here.
In you go. And I keep stirring?
Yeah, keep stirring.
Keep stirring.
All the time.
So when you were a child, did your mum get you to cook with her?
Not at all. I used to live in a big family, so grandmother, mom and auntie, they were always lining up who's going to cook the next meal. And you cannot have too many cooks in the kitchen or too many chefs in the same kitchen. So I didn't get to cook, and I had to learn cooking when I moved to Australia, and I had to be self-sufficient, look after myself, learn how to cook.
So that's why you're spending so much long looking at recipes and going back through the traditional thing to make the stuff that you had when you were a child and in Armenia.
Yes, and funnily enough, in Armenia we didn't have like Chinese restaurants, Italian restaurants as much, or if even we had a few, they were not affordable for a family like ours. So when I moved here, for me it was like a big deal going to a Chinese restaurant and learn to cook Chinese food or Italian food. And it's good to now go back where I come from and being able to demonstrate you this dish from my childhood.
So it's starting to turn into a paste, Lena. What are you going to add now?
So now I'm going to add some tomato paste in it. Did you know, Kristen, you can buy no salt tomato paste from the shops, like no added salt?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing. Next thing which we are going to do is to add some flour, or as I said, replace it with cornstarch for gluten-free option. So what this is going to do is going to thicken the sauce.
Okay.
And I can ask.
So it's really thickening up in here.
Yeah. So we have boiling water in here. So next thing I'm going to do is just to add a little bit water at a time, and I will ask Kristen to keep stirring.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So imagine you're making a cake and you're slowly adding the liquid. So it does stick a little bit to the spoon.
Yeah, and I will add a little bit more water.
So now it's quite running as
Yeah.
Lena's pouring all that water in. Okay, so now it is very like a soup stock. All of the bits that have been added are floating in it. It's quite thin.
So next thing which we are going to do is to chop our cabbages. Fermented cabbage will go in first. Because it's sour, it takes longer to cook, so we will put it in first. Just make sure if your cabbage has a core, just remove it. It's unpleasant in the soup to have a core cabbage because it doesn't get cooked as much. But just make sure you take this out as you go. I have here a bit more than what I need, but you can feel free to use more. It's up to your liking. Now I'll be adding the cabbage, so be careful, Kristen.
Sure.
Can keep stirring.
So when I tried this the other day at Lena's, the cabbage was delicious. It didn't taste pickled. I don't know what I expected it to taste like, but it didn't taste like what I expected.
Because
And
we
it
don't
was-
use vinegar to ferment it, so once you wash it, it's quite light to eat. I just like it eating
Yeah,
like
it
raw.
was light to eat and it was slightly crunchy, which was also nice.
So as I mentioned before, this is a vegan dish. However, if you are a meat lover, you can use pancetta in it and it will still be delicious. Pancetta or bacon should be fine. Just make sure you trim the fat. And when I fry pancetta, I normally don't add extra oil because it has already the fat. So the pancetta you can add while you're cooking the onions, or you can add at the end as a garnish. So as you can see, we didn't add during the soup because we want to get vegan dish. But at the end, if we would like, Kristen, if you would like, you can add pancetta to yours and tell me how you feel.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea, Lena. And nice that you can make it vegan for those who don't want to eat meat, but for those who do, they can add it at the end. So this has probably been about 5 minutes. Is it time for the potatoes to go in now?
So potatoes take slightly longer to cook. So we'll add potatoes, and after it has been cooked for another 10 minutes, we will add our cracked wheat, which has been soaked in the water.
Yeah.
With this dish, you can use any type of wheat, cracked wheat, bulgur, coarse wheat, whatever you have at home handy. But in this particular recipe, I like using bulgur, which is cracked wheat. You know, in Armenia, we use the steams as well. Well, I've noticed in Australia, people don't.
Yeah, in Australia they don't, but I've actually started using the stems more in soups and sometimes when I'm making dishes, I'm cutting them up finely and putting them in.
I'm just going to use because we say the nutrition is in the stems as well. You know, in Armenia, thyme is different. We call it mountain thyme. We call it actually urts, but you can't find it in Australia.
So it's probably drier, is it? Like some of the rosemaries that are grown on mountains in the Mediterranean, they're more pungent.
I'm going to use some dill as well, Kristen, in this soup. So this winter dishes mostly, Kristen, we'll be using like dried herbs.
Okay. So
Because in winter we don't have fresh.
so people are drying their own herbs in the same way they're pickling their cabbages.
That's
and
correct.
drying their meat and stuff, getting ready for winter.
For winter. Kristen, can I ask you for a favor?
Sure.
Can you just keep stirring the soup? Because what happens, cabbage can stick to the bottom of the pan, especially if you are cooking on a big medium heat. So it's always good to make sure.
So this is fine, I think, Lena. It's not sticking. Shall I put the lid back on?
Yes, please. Add the bulgur and cook it for further 5 to 10 minutes. This will depend if the potatoes are cooked. And after that, we are going to turn it off and add our fresh herbs and the remaining salt if needed and so forth. So I've just added bulgur to the dish. You can soak it in cold water or you can add it as is. It's up to your liking. I normally soak it so it is easier to cook. So Kristen, while we're waiting, can I just get to start on pancettas? Just fry.
Sounds like a good idea. I'm hungry and ready to eat.
At this stage, I won't be adding any fat or any oil to this and see how we go. And while we are waiting, I can start on the onions.
Okay, well, the potatoes are nearly cooked. Lena, I tested them a minute ago and they're
So we'll
coming
have
along
it all.
nicely.
That's nice. So we can add, Kristen, then the fresh herbs.
Sure.
Because we turn the stove off. Herbs go in. I'm going to add chili. Actually, a little bit of kick brings out the flavor very much, so I quite like it.
So that's a dried chili,
That's
Lena?
a dried chili. You can use powdered chili, whatever you have at home. I'm going to use ground black pepper and mixed herbs. I have parsley, dill, and some of the thyme. So I'm just going to put that one.
Okay, so we've got fresh and dried
Yes.
herbs in there.
Now I'm going to slice the shallots and then we're going to fry it. First time I saw shallot was in Australia. In Armenia we don't have shallots.
You don't have
No.
shallots. So what would you use for an onion garnish?
Just a red onion.
So how many people would this soup serve?
I would say 4 to 6, depending if you are having this as a meal. If you are using bread with it or if you are adding pancetta, then it will fill you up quicker.
Okay.
But if you are having just a little bit, it will be probably 6 people can have it with bread on side.
So Lena, I reckon this pancetta
Yeah,
is ready. What do you
it
think?
looks
Would
good
you
and it smells
like
good.
me to take it off?
I can be a good assistant
Oh,
sometimes.
there you go. We can swap back and forth.
So we're using paper towel to drain excess fat from pancetta, Kristen.
Oh, good idea.
Just add a little bit of oil and see how we go. If needed, I'll add some more, but only 1 tablespoon at the moment should be enough.
Okay, so now for the healthy food.
Healthy food. Healthy food is good for you. I think our soup is ready. All these herbs are coming through. That's great. You can go a bit crispy if you would like, but right now, this is perfect. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for giving us a bit information about the nutrition aspect of the food. I'm really interested to know.
It's a pleasure, Lena. The food smells delicious. Can I say that first of all, and looks very appetizing and delicious. Today, I'd like to just talk a little bit about that and how you can keep yourself healthy. The Armenian culture is an interesting one, and it's one I didn't know much about, but I have been reading a little bit of background. And we draw on a food culture of over 2,000 years old with lots of surrounding influences from countries in the region. So it brings a beautiful, interesting mix of flavours and textures and old traditions to your dishes. Now, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about, particularly with some of the weapons that you've got in your recipes that are excellent for weight loss, diabetes, lowering your blood pressure and improving your gut immunity.
So tick, tick, tick for me.
Tick, 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 tick. So I think I'd like to start first of all on this little grain. I don't know if you can see it. I mean, I say burgle, but you pronounce it a little differently.
We say bulgur.
Yes, like quite guttural.
Yes.
It's a very cheap grain. A lot of people will know that as probably by the name of cracked wheat and have eaten it in tabbouleh. It actually comes from the wheat berry, and it's a grain that dates back over 4,000 years. So it's a very old grain. When we talk about ancient grains, this is an ancient grain. It does need, I think the soaking is good beforehand. It speeds up the cooking time, but when you use it in a salad, you also need to soak it. You can use it in stir fries and all sorts of things. But it's very good for weight loss. And the reason why it is good for weight loss is when you eat foods like tabbouleh that are the whole grain, they're full of resistant starch and they make the gut feel fuller for longer. So you find that you can eat that for lunch, and then you won't probably need to eat again for dinner. So these are good foods to have in that diet. The resistant starch also helps to lower your blood glucose level or your blood sugar. So it's good for helping fighting diseases like diabetes. It's really good for your gut, feeding your good gut bacteria. Second thing is your fermented cabbage. Fermentation is such an old, probably one of the oldest methods of preservation. So the cabbage is high in fibre, high in vitamin C, so it's a really good food to have, and it's very inexpensive, as you say. And it took your culture through their very cold winters. So,
Yes.
you know, it's a win-win on all levels. So increasing your fruit and vegetables, reducing your salt, increasing your fibre, these are all good things for your health through the winter months, and to boost your immunity. With things like tomato paste, you really need to be a warrior in the supermarket and read all the labels. 2 + 5 vegetables. So this is a slogan we use to try and get people to eat more fruit and vegetables. If you just eat more veggies in your diet, it's the one thing that can make the biggest difference to your health. So you've got quite a few vegetables in this dish. You've got the cabbage, the onion, the potatoes, you've got garlic for flavouring, you had the tomato paste, and you've got an abundance of fresh herbs, all full of antioxidants, all good for anti-inflammatory properties in your body. So a great dish from that perspective. So well done and a great choice. Now look, if you've just got a small garden, or even if you have no garden but you've got a couple of pots you can put outside, you can cheaply and easily buy your fresh herbs that you can pick and just use as you go, because often we buy a whole bunch of herbs for a dish and it sits in the fridge or in a jug on the bench, and it ends up going off. So just planting a few basic herbs that you use regularly is a good thing to do. But the smell of the oils coming out of these herbs, particularly this thyme, and you've got the dill and the parsley, is just amazing, isn't it? Just amazing. So fresh is best. It's not always possible to have fresh, I know, and we've used some dried herbs today to really lift the flavour, but if you can get the fresh herbs, they really do make a difference to the dish. So we've got an economical soup that's high in flavour, packed with all sorts of things that draw out those flavours. We've got a dish that's seasonal, so it suits the climate. It's a slow, wet dish for winter.
So the way forward, I would say, is the healthy way forward. It was great to have all your advices. So now I know at least what each ingredient stands for and how good it is for my body.
All cultures, regardless of where we come from, tend to use more salt in our cooking. To reduce salt in your food, it's a good thing to do it gradually. It's a bit like reducing caffeine as well as sugar. It's very hard to go cold turkey, so a little bit at a time. If you base your meals on as many fresh foods as possible, you'll find that you will avoid a lot of salt in your diet, because 75% of the salt in the Australian diet comes from processed food. The reason that there is such high concern for salt, it's linked with hypertension or high blood pressure that I'm sure everyone has heard of. High blood pressure is directly linked to cardiovascular disease and to stroke. Consider other ways to bring flavour into your dish if you feel that the dish is not tasty enough. Think of your curry spices, your fresh herbs, dried herbs, to really bring out the flavour in your dish. And you'll see some of these examples in the recipes today with people using fresh rosemary and sage, garlic, the sweetness of onions cooked down slowly to add flavour to your dish. And all of these things will help give you the road to a better health.